For the second time in as many months, Donald Trump has survived an assassination attempt. The first attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania left Trump bloodied in front of a large crowd where a plethora of cameras captured the real estate tycoon's defiant and inspiring reaction. Democratic politicians and the media have been escalating their rhetoric surrounding the presidential candidate for years, regularly making comparisons to Hitler and labeling Trump as an existential threat to democracy. The chattering class continued to make their hatred known, but at least for a few weeks they recognized that it was probably best to tone things down. Now that a second gunman has attempted to take Trump's life, the left has dropped any pretense of moderation. Progressives have leaned heavily into the idea that Trump is responsible for the attacks on his own life, doubling down on their rhetorical justifications. The left has decided that political violence should be a regular feature of American life, and that only one side should ever be allowed to wield it. The fact that the Pennsylvania shooting in July took place at a public rally meant that events were well documented, but the shooter was left intentionally shrouded in mystery. Thomas Matthew Crooks had a suspiciously thin social media profile for a 20-year-old, and government officials appeared determined to obfuscate his motives, with the FBI going so far as to lie under oath about his internet posting. Trump's newest assailant, 58-year-old Ryan Routh, has a far more robust public profile full of political opinions. With a Biden-Harris bumper sticker and 19 separate donations to Democratic causes, Routh's politics are as clear as it gets. The Democratic donor was a big supporter of the war in Ukraine, speaking to the New York Times and appearing in an Azov Battalion propaganda video where he declared his willingness to recruit and fight for the foreign nation. Despite having a sordid legal history, including a standoff with police involving a fully automatic weapon, Routh was somehow allowed to travel to Ukraine in 2022, where he intended to serve in the Foreign Legion but was rejected due to age. Both Facebook and Twitter took down the shooter's social media account, but before they were scrubbed clean, users were able to capture several posts in which Routh echoed the rhetoric of both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, claiming that, quote, democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose, end quote. More information is certain to be uncovered, but what is already clear is that Routh was a regular consumer and true believer in the kind of radicalizing propaganda regularly pushed out by MSNBC and the White House. When liberal influencers compared Trump to Hitler, Routh took them seriously, and when they told him that Trump was an existential threat to the country and could not be allowed to return to the office, Routh took action. The media has been grooming radicals in the hope that someone would kill Donald Trump for years. In my piece written after the first Trump assassination attempt, I explained that process in detail and predicted the left would continue until another shooter finally succeeded in murdering the former president. The fact that the left no longer feels the need to even tap the brakes in the aftermath of a second assassination attempt is a really terrible sign. After Democrats failed to strip Trump from the ballot or jail him on manufactured charges, Joe Biden lost the first presidential debate in stunning fashion. Despite this humiliating defeat, Biden ignored calls from his own party to step aside and vowed to continue his run for president until the first assassination attempt failed to kill Trump. Only then did Biden relinquish his role as candidate through some random post on Twitter with no personal verification, which I'm sure was totally voluntary. Trump managed to defeat Kamala Harris in the second presidential debate, despite having to square off not just with his Democratic opponent, but with the two ABC moderators as well. Another devastating debate loss and another assassination attempt. Progressives, unable to compete in the realm of traditional electoral politics, are creating a climate of political terror, jailing their opponents when they can and attempting to murder them when that fails. Sadly, this is far from the first time that left-wing political terror has come to dominate the American landscape. President William McKinley was assassinated by an anarchist in 1901. In the 1970s, we saw a horrific amount of left-wing terror with over 2,000 bombs planted in 1972 alone by radical progressives. This normalization of leftist political violence has been all but expunged from the public consciousness, and many of the perpetrators have been elevated to prestigious positions inside the ruling elite. Bill Ayers, one of the leaders of the radical progressive terror group the Weather Underground, became a professor at the University of Chicago and famously a mentor to President Barack Obama. The left has always celebrated and elevated its radicals, including terrorists, and now it's seeking to return to a climate dominated by political violence. In the 1930s, Spain was a country facing incredible political turmoil. Several factions existed, ranging from communists to liberals, monarchists to fascists. These factions coalesced into two distinct coalitions representing the general left and right, and the deep cultural divide they represented was defined by incendiary political rhetoric. Assassination attempts became a common feature of everyday life. The Spanish Prime Minister and several party leaders were killed, which inevitably led to the organization of partisan militias and the declaration of formal hostilities. When one political faction decides that the regular use of violence is an acceptable tactic, the options of their opponents narrow rather rapidly. The left uses its media hegemony and institutional advantage to portray Trump as some kind of agent of division and hate. But when the bullets are all flying one direction, it becomes very clear which party is responsible for the political violence that is now being regularly deployed. If progressives insist on feeding their supporters an endless diet of apocalyptic pornography designed to evoke the most radical responses imaginable, some percentage of that audience will take them seriously. The left is so self-righteous in their convictions and so secure in their own power that they truly believe they can freely encourage multiple assassination attempts on the opposition candidate without any consequence. The ground that Democratic politicians and their media allies are treading on is incredibly dangerous. This kind of escalation is a disastrous game that no one wins. If there's any cooler heads remaining on the political left, they must put an end to their party's embrace of political violence. The path that they're driving down at full speed only has one horrible result, and no one who cares for this country would wish to arrive at that destination. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click like. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure that you subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform, and when you do, leave a rating or review. It really helps with the algorithm magic. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Gab or Instagram or Substack, if you'd like to watch these videos on Rumble or Odyssey, the links to do all of that are down below in the description. And if you'd like to pick up my book, The Total State, you can do that at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or order it at your favorite local bookstore. And of course, you can watch all of my shows and read all of my columns over at The Blaze. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.